Hello everyone and welcome to episode number 24 of Our Underground Life. Usually I do snippets of different, slice of life things that we're doing here around our homestead. But today it's just going to be one topic. I'm going to show you our Back to Eden garden. And I'm excited to do that. I hope it will inspire you. So let's get on with the show. So what is a Back to Eden garden? If you go to backtoedenfilm.com, you can watch the free documentary there. But basically, going back to Eden with your garden, it's along the same lines as the roost out method, if you're familiar with that. Roost out's deal was hay. And I actually tried hay our first year here. And it worked okay, but I didn't want to keep paying for hay, so I didn't do it right. I didn't keep piling on the hay, so it really didn't do the irrigation, keep the soil moist the way it's supposed to if you do it right. You're supposed to, every time you see a weed, you put a big old other clump of hay down, and you keep piling up the hay, so it keeps composting, and the soil stays moist, blah, blah, blah. Well, Back to Eden is specifically using wood chips. However, it's generally, the idea is you cover the soil in your garden as much as you can with some kind of mulch. That helps both to fertilize it and to irrigate it. Wood chips are the best deal because they can hold as much water as peat moss, which is a lot of water. And they release that water then when it dries up. So when you have a drought situation, it'll release the water that it's been saving, basically. It also composts a lot more slowly than hay and other kinds of vegetation. So why did I get into the Back to Eden garden? I got into it because last year we had a drought for about a month. There was no rain and temperatures between 95 and 100, and I didn't get any more hay. And I tried to mulch with just basically weeds that I pulled up around the property, weeds and grass, and tried to mulch with that. But during that drought, I had things drying up. If you don't know, we do not have running water. So, drip irrigation and soaker hoses are not an option. And I was at the end of myself. I said, I'm going to quit gardening if I can't figure out a way not to have to kill myself, watering every day, going back and forth from the rain barrels over there. 10 times literally a day, or 10 times maybe 3 or 4 times a week, which is still a lot, in the miserable heat. I didn't want to do that anymore. So I did some looking around, and I finally discovered the Back to Eden method, which is, as I said, you cover it up, you cover the ground, and the best thing to do is wood chips. So what I'm sharing with you right now is basically what I've got going on. These are strawberries, and these are June-bearing strawberries that were moved. The strawberry patch was one of the things that, was totally frustrating last year, so I ended up pulling out most of the plants. I tried to save about 100 of them. A lot of them didn't make it, but enough made it, and I bought some new plants. So these are everbearing on this side. I saved a few everbearing. But so I've got strawberries here, and I've got strawberries in the mini orchard area. So one of the first things I mulched was over there, the blueberries, because they did very badly during the drought. They're very thirsty bushes. And so I said, let me back up. Where did we get the wood chips? Side of the road. The electric company came and took out a bunch of trees along the state highway that runs near our property and shipped the wood, just left huge piles of wood in the easement. So Jerry started taking his car, filling the trunk with 5-gallon buckets. We had a lot of buckets from the earth sheltered house waterproofing Which is why we were able to do it. We didn't go out and buy a bunch of buckets. We actually saved the buckets, and from the grout and from the joint compound too. All that from finishing up the house. So we probably have like 25-gallon buckets at least now. So he would fill up his car with 5-gallon buckets, and at one point this spring he was going every day and getting wood chips. In the fall we were doing it, maybe once a week or something. But last fall I got the blueberries chipped right away. I started the asparagus patch, which you saw a little bit ago. I also did the grapes last fall. This grapevine here, and then there's another grapevine at the end of this trellis, is also in wood chips. Actually, before I got to backtrack again. Before I put wood chips around the blueberries, I put wood chips around the fruit and nut trees that are around the perimeter of our property. We've got like a mulberry and a pomegranate back there. And if you go back down this way, there's some filberts, a couple of almonds, and jujubes. And so I was having to water those all by hand during the drought, because they had, I'd put a few weeds around for mulch, but it didn't do anything, and I was so frustrated. And it was hot and sweaty, and I didn't want to do it anymore. So those were actually the first things to get mulched after I discovered the Back to Eden method, and subsequently discovered the wood chips on the side of the road, which, by the way, I don't believe that was a coincidence. It was crazy, let me tell you. Like a couple of weeks after I found out about the Back to Eden method, literally a couple weeks, is when they cut down and chipped up those trees. I think it was a God thing. This is a fun thing I learned. Actually from the book Growing Food God's Way, which is the first place I found out about Back to Eden. I found it free on Kindle last fall. Was it last fall, or I think it was still summer actually, late summer. But these are potato hills, and I need to harvest because the plants have died back, which means it's time to harvest. Here's one that's still here. Doesn't look that great. It's been eaten upon by bugs, but what you do, you don't have to cut potatoes apart. You don't have to start sweet potatoes in a jar to start the little shoots. You don't have to do that. All you have to do is take the whole potato, excuse my shadow there, take the whole potato, lay it on top of the ground, and pile a foot of wood chips on it, or in the case of some of my sweet potatoes, sawdust. And guess what? It grows. You get as many potatoes as you do cutting them apart. And I'm going to that's going to be part of the next our Underground Life episode, is we're going to be harvesting the potatoes. I'm not sure if they turned out real well, and I'll explain why in that video, and we'll just see what happens. No big deal. So I've got this. There are mung beans growing here, but they're not really mulched. They look like they're mulched with wood chips, but they're not. They are I just planted planted the mulch here, and I had mulched it with cardboard initially, but Jerry had collected extra wood chips. I wasn't sure where to put it, so I said, well, if I want to do more potatoes or more sweet potatoes, I can, do it here. I'll pile up the wood chips here and be able to use them for next year. These potato plants are still viable. But here's the sweet potatoes back here. And another thing, when you do this method, when you put them on the ground and pile up 12 inches, I didn't do 12 inches of sawdust. It was probably like 6 to 8 inches of sawdust. But what happens is you can do it before the last frost date. You can do it while it's still cold because the mulch protects them from freezing. So you can get things started a little earlier. So these sweet potatoes here are in sawdust. These are in wood chips. These are actually a little bit, I planted these a month after I planted the other ones. Now this bed here, this bed, I'm not going to bother doing wood chips. I'm going to plant winter greens there mainly, and usually in the winter we get enough. It's cool. Obviously it's cool, and we get enough rain usually that things don't need to be watered in the winter. Another thing I have put wood chips around are all these, the garlic. garlic become perennial if you let them go for 2 years. Then from after that, if you don't want to harvest bulbs, you just go dig under and harvest whatever, not bulbs, yeah, cloves. Harvest whatever cloves you want, leave it there, it'll just keep growing new cloves. At least that's what I've heard happen. I haven't actually tried it yet. The kiwi here is in part sawdust, part wood chips. This is my male kiwi, and I've got a female on the other end of this trellis. Sugar snap peas that you see here are dying because it's that time. It's getting hot. It's June, the middle of June. But I put those in wood chips after after they got about 6 inches tall. They've been doing just fine. Back here, the pole beans. And I have to step around all these zinnias, these volunteer zinnias. And by the way, it's a great thing to have flowers volunteer in your garden. And I kind of explain why in my video about cheap companion planting, so you don't want to miss that. Excuse the sound of my voice getting muffled. I'm wiping. It's hot. It's hot and humid, so I'm wiping sweat off my upper lip. But the pole beans and the red Malabar spinach that are right here by my poles have all been mulched in wood chips. It's kind of hard to see because it's a regular forest down there, isn't it? Yes, there are weeds too, but everything's growing like crazy. I can't believe how great these beans are doing. They did horrible last year. They did just absolutely horrible last year. We might have had too much rain last year. That was a year of the flooding. We had like 24 inches in May. Anyway, lettuce bed. I put wood chips around the lettuce after most of them had already started bolting by the time I put the wood chips. And the reason I did is because I want them to grow in the wood chips. So because lettuce really likes the moisture. As you can see, they're all going to seed now, about to have flowers. And these peppers here have some wood chips. So these two beds here, that's a zucchini by the way. This bed and then this bed with the tomatoes, I originally made last year a lasagna bed because I'd read a book that said the author had her lasagna beds kept producing without being watered in the middle of a drought, like in the Austin, Texas area. So I originally created a lasagna bed with mostly leaves, like 3 to 4 feet, with some weeds, other weeds underneath. I added wood chips because I felt like it would be better insurance against irrigation, and also there are a lot of little annoying critters that like to eat new plants in the leaves, which doesn't happen in the wood chips. And so I've got actually 9. I think that little one is number 9. I had originally, including that one, I originally had planted 13 tomatoes here, and 9 of them made it because some of them just got eaten up and didn't come back. Yeah, very happy plants. Of course, it's spring still. It's middle of June, so it's still raining once in a while. Peppers are finally doing something. But let me explain real quick about my carrot pot. I had actually this whole area where the peppers and tomato beds are. Originally, I was going to do a self-watering thing. I found this guy, Larry Hall, up in Brainerd, Minnesota. I found his YouTube channel, and he was explaining his self-watering system. I was like, that's great, then I'll never have to water ever again. Well, I got to thinking about it, and experience with this pot has borne out, that my hypothesis was correct. I finally thought, I developed a hypothesis. Well, you know what? Containers always need more water, and if I did a self-watering garden, we wouldn't have enough water in our rain tanks to water these things all summer. So the carrots get a pot because when I plant them in a pot, I don't have pill beetles and other things instantly eating the newly sprouted carrots, which has happened to me before and is really disconcerting. So carrots grow in pots, but everything else, we're going back to Eden, just heavy mulch. If you're not subscribed and you want to keep tabs on how the Back to Eden method is working, or just you want to see how my garden is changing every few weeks, be sure to subscribe. Well, thanks a lot for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up. and share it with your friends.